Hey guys, Joshy here, BJ on Game Day. Just thought I'd do this quick video. Unfortunately I couldn't make it on last night's video with Brent and Bogan. I watched their cast today, so it was pretty good. Obviously lacking a little bit of content with regards to obviously what we do together with the crystal ball and that, and a little bit of talk about me avoiding the chippy challenge and that, but no, we'll definitely have that for you guys next week. Unfortunately I just had some family things on last night that couldn't avoid. So guys, just a recap from last week. Round score for me last week, 1,088. So climbed up about 600 spots, sitting around that top 4,000. So again, like to be a little bit higher, but getting pretty set for a big run home, and hopefully can get up to that top 1,000, maybe top 500. But 12 trades left, so starting to get a little bit light on. Will use all 5 this week, so that'll leave me 7. I'll use the other 2 probably next week. We'll just have a look and see team lists and injuries and things like that. But if I use that 5 this week, that'll give me 12. Unfortunately, obviously Andrew Fafita going out injured. Took him out, brought him back in, hoping he'd play 16, and took the chance, and unfortunately missed out playing for Tonga, and we'll miss for the Sharkies the next 2 weeks. So a little bit unlucky there. But yeah, as I say, if I put in the 5 this week, I'll have 12. Put in the other 2 next week and I'll have 14, and that sort of was where I wanted to be going into those 2 bye rounds. I think this year it's not as essential to have trades going into the last sort of few rounds. I think with the amount of cash cows and money we've made over the first sort of 12 to 14 weeks, I think it's just not as essential. I think you can probably come the end of rounds sort of 17, 18. If you've traded right, really have sort of 21, maybe even 22 or 23 guns in your team. Maybe only 2 or 3 nuffies or cheapies that are on the bench that just sort of take up the numbers and have allowed you to sort of create that cash flow. So yeah, I'm pretty confident with where my team is. I think I've handled both buys well, and looking at the run home, when I do have those 5 trades after round 16, there's probably just a handful of players that'll make up those spots that I'll bring in over the weeks after that. And that includes the likes of Tommy Turbo. Unfortunately, unlike Brent, I haven't brought him in. And I've seen sort of the top sort of maybe 20 ranked guys have all got him as well. So big risk, and really hurts after the scores that we've seen. And obviously the origin form from him with those 3 tries, basically named in the centres but played like a second fullback. Everywhere in attack he was basically backing up like a fullback. So really impressive stuff from there from Turbo, and no doubt Manly will completely benefit from that. BJ on Game Day League, currently sitting 5th overall. So look, week before I'm not too sure where I was, but sort of hovering around that sort of 4th to 7th area, but definitely catching up to the guys ahead. So Bunning snags, Charlie White, he's gone backwards the last couple of weeks, so just starting to tell. And look, that's probably what we see. It's really hard to hold that consistency. I know a couple of the other podcasts have had a few of the guys in the top 5 on their podcast, and always good to hear from them. And it seems from the start of the season they just had those few pods that have performed, blokes like your Mitchell Moseses and things like that. Origin recap, wow, what a game. Massive game from the Blues, really impressive stuff. What was it, 38-6 in the end, I think. Turbo was fantastic. Wade Graham was brilliant. Actually pulled a little bit, got a little bit lucky there last week. I was actually going to bring in Wade Graham. The only reason I didn't bring him in was he actually was named on the bench in that Cronulla game against Canberra. I thought he would have been brought into the starting squad. I thought, even though he was named on the bench and started from there, I thought they might have brought him into the 13. If he had done that, I would have brought him in, and it would have sort of stuffed me around for these later rounds. As it is, I actually brought in Isaiah Papali instead, and he went quite solid. I think he scored about sort of 50 or 60, which is sort of what you get from him. But Wade Graham, a sensational game in a sort of makeshift 6 role for the Blues, but fantastic across the park for the Blues. I think if you go through their 1-17 over the Queensland 1-17, every player in the Blues team completely outplayed their opposite number. I think from a Queensland point of view, Joshy Papali stood up, as you always said. He's an absolute brute. He's a wrecking ball, and just always gives 110%. So you know exactly what you're going to get from him. Benny Hunt in the 9 stepped up. A lot of people in the games past have sort of used him as a scapegoat, and rightfully so. He's under those big pressure moments, a few drop balls and a few folding situations, but definitely stepped up as Queensland's probably, beside Papali, their best. Other than that, not too much to write home about. Queensland were very, very ordinary. Just didn't turn up with the intent to play, and that was evident very early on. It was probably a long shot from half-time for them to come back again like they did in Game 1, but Game 1, despite the scoreline there at half-time, they were definitely the team on top. So we didn't see that in Game 2, and I think the result went accordingly. Will be a massive game going to Sydney for Game 3, obviously with the New South Wales crowd behind the boys. Just goes to show you what those sort of home crowds do. Queensland, Game 1, they might not get home if they played anywhere else other than Suncorp. 40, 45, 50,000 people at Suncorp all in Maroon is a massive thing for guys who are playing those games. So, big game in a couple of weeks, so it'll be good to see that. From a Supercoach point of view, look, I just thought I'd go through basically the run home, looking into the bye round for round 16. Obviously, Super Trade Week this week, everyone gets 5 trades, so that's huge. It's essential that you use those well, regardless of whether you're playing head-to-head or overall position. Anyone who's obviously playing cash leagues and things like that, you've really got to use those trades well. Try and find a pod, but basically just shore up your team. Any guns that you don't have that you think are essential, definitely get those guys in there. So I've actually broken it down, and I sort of went through the players in the game at the moment, and I've come up with 5 must-haves. And now these are pretty clear-cut. This is not news to anyone. These are guys that just should be in your team, whether it's now, whether it's after round 16, but these guys just have to be in your team. We knew they would have to be from the start of the season, and it's really turned out exactly that. So, number 1's Damien Cook. A little bit lacking in form lately. I'm not too sure whether that's a little bit, obviously, origin disruption at South. They've had a few injuries around the park over at South. Semi Burgess is out. Cody Walker, obviously in origin and in and out. No doubt that's dented his confidence a little bit. Adam Reynolds, Mr. Glass, he's broken down again, but he should be back in the next couple of weeks. Alex Johnston's been in and out. So, definitely some disruption there. But what we did see from Damien Cook in the Blues squad, what I loved about that is he didn't overplay his hand. He really sort of picked and chose when to run, but he used the players around him. You're in the Blues squad, you're in a star sort of squad of 17 players. And he definitely played that well. He didn't overplay his hand. He was brilliant. He was, again, one of the best on the park because he just did what he had to at the right time. From a South point of view, he steps up more. At the end of the day, if you don't have him already, look, at the money he is, it's a little bit tough to get him in, considering there's no real sort of straight swap to him money-wise. But if you're running blokes like Cam Smith, you may just have enough on the bench and you just got to hope Cam obviously finishes off the season well. Second one, look, obviously your 2 fullbacks, James Tedesco, Tom Trbojevic. Tommy Turbo's come back absolutely brilliant. It's just disappointing that he did have those 2 hamstring injuries. Just takes away from what his season could have been, because when he has been on the park, he's been the best player in the game. Look, all the plaudits go out to Kalen Ponga and Tedesco and a few other guys, but the fact is that when this guy's on the park, from a Supercoach point of view, but from a playing point of view, he just seems to be the best player in the game. He's probably not as dynamic or as much, not that he doesn't have the X factor, but it's just a different kind of X factor that you're sort of used to. You see sort of what Teddy does, what Ponga does. Turbo just does it in a different way. He's a big lanky bloke, but shit, he can move. So those 2 guys. 4th one, Kalen Ponga. The great thing about this guy is that he plays 6. In Supercoach he plays 6. It's going to be a little bit hard next year when this happens, because no doubt he will revert back to just a fullback. It's going to be really, really tough to choose a 3 between Teddy, Ponga and Turbo. Kalen Ponga, definitely one you've got to have in there, and he'd be my starting 6 week in, week out. And the 5th one, Tamalolo. Wow, absolutely amazing. His base stats lately have just been absolutely huge. Again, these 5 guys, if you had the money at the start, they're sort of set and forget, but at the end of the day, when we start with the 9.6 or 9.4 salary cap or whatever it is, it's just hard to get everyone in there. And obviously with the injuries that happened to Turbo and that, we just sort of had to weigh it all up. Look, fringe must-haves. guys that sort of are there, but, at time to time you may have had them out. I'm going to go with around about 5 or 6 guys. The first one, and this is purely a positional thing, I don't think, despite his cult following, I don't think he's probably one of the best players in the game, and I think there are weaknesses there. I think he's definitely embraced playing in Australia and his first season here, and that's Johnny Bateman. Obviously, dual second row centre wing. Started the season at 400,000k. That slight injury hiccup with the eye socket with about 3 weeks out when it was sort of named 6 to 8. Fantastic comeback from him, and looks like he hasn't skipped a beat. So he's obviously been training really well, and just a great culture down in Canberra at the moment with all those English players. Obviously, Brent and I. I'm living up in Brisbane now, but Brent and I are down in Canberra and know a few of the lads, and you sort of see them through work and sponsorship circles and that, and they're just really got it going well down there. I think probably the biggest disappointment is the Leipana. Obviously from a few years ago, hasn't really kicked on. Both of them have been injured. Obviously Joey Leilua out for the season, and Rapana's had nothing but troubles this year. So hopefully in the next year or two we can see that come back and that really add to what already is a strong Raiders squad. And a bit of a shout out to Jackie Whiten. After the off-field dramas that he had last season, to start this year at 6, he has been absolutely huge. I've got him in one of my draft leagues. He's a good mate of mine, and it's just great to see him on the park and just thriving like this. He's really taken on that number 6 spot. Massive bonus for him to get that starting centre spot for the Blues in game 2. Obviously, a bit of a hiccup there early with the penalty try, but ran hard, ran some good lines, really showed that I think he belongs in Origin. Ultimately, in years to come, look, at the same time, Latrell replaces him. It's as simple as that. Latrell's got too big a rap on him, too big a future. He just needs to get those few things behind the scenes right. And as Brent Bogan mentioned last night in last night's video, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but it's definitely something to have a look at. And hopefully he can get that right and get back in that representative jersey. Another one, look, Cameron Munster. We've seen not so much rocks and diamonds from him this season, but he's been fantastic without scoring massive. And this is probably, I don't know why it is, but the Melbourne system down there, they don't rely on him as the sole playmaker. Obviously with Cameron Smith down there, the culture and the system that Craig Bellamy's got just means that they're much more of a team effort rather than that solo player that you've seen with your JTs and your Joey Johns and blokes like that have sort of dominated teams in the past. And I think it's a big reason why Melbourne are just sort of always entrenched in that top 4, and at their worst season it's a top 8 kind of thing. So fantastically coached and coached as a team rather than an individually led team. And Cam Munster, the reason I think he's a fringe must-have is just because of how classy he is. He will pop up those games where he scores 120, 130, and it'll just come out of nowhere. So you do have to sort of take the 40s and 50s, which is, that's the hard part, is picking and choosing when to play him. If you do have Kalen Ponga as the starting 5'8", when do you put the reserve on Cam Munster? When do you maybe sub him in and have him as a captain, a pod captain? So, a little bit hard with that one. Another one for me as a fringe must-have is, I think, look, Taumalolo's really stepped up, but I think from a consistency point of view, the best second row in the game this year has been Cameron Murray. I haven't had him all season, and it really, really has hurt. He has been absolutely fantastic. He's been solid for the Blues, obviously coming off the bench and brand new into the squad. Hasn't got massive amount of minutes, but he's done his job, and that's all you can ask. What he has offered at Clubland is an attacking player that you won't sort of see at the Origin level. At the Origin level, he's just there to roll up his sleeves and do the work. Whereas in Clubland, plenty of line breaks, a few tries here and there, really has been impressive. So ownership is pretty high, and I say it'll stay that way. So not too much of a pod, but with people sort of looking at 16, I can't imagine anyone trading him out. If you do, I think you've got rocks in your head. But definitely a sort of fringe must-have, and if you've had him from the start, you're laughing. Another one, this is a little bit controversial because he's been out injured and his form's probably been shit house, but that's Sean Johnson. Look, I'm a Sharkies fan and I'm pretty biased, but I think the best team on the park, if Cronulla have got it out there, I think we win the comp. I really do. I just think the attacking formulas that the Sharks have sort of missed in the last couple of years, even back in 16 when we won, I don't think we attacked as well. I know, obviously, we're missing Valentine Holmes. Back then we had Benny Barber. There was a different kind of attacking format. I think Sean Johnson just adds that much to this team. When you got young fellas who've come in like Britton Nakora, Bronson Sherry, Matty Moylan at the back once he's healthy as well, and again another Mr. Glass in Josh Dugan, I think that the Sharks, the forward pack is where they lack. And that sort of sounds strange because you've got blokes like Fafita, Gallen's getting a little bit old, but I think there's teams that when the Sharks do get beat, they absolutely get bashed in the middle. Fafita, look, one of his games there the other week, he probably ran as hard as I'd ever seen him run before. It was really, really impressive. Might have been against the Raiders. But we're normally used to the sideways stuff and things like that. I think where teams just absolutely destroy Cronulla is in the centre. So for me, watching my team, that's vital, is that they step up. And I think the young fellas on the bench are vital to that. Blokes like Jack Williams, I think he's huge. And Braden Hamlin-Ueli has been an absolute godsend. I'm pretty sure he signed an extension not too long ago. So, he's going to be massive for us the next couple of years. Just really, a few tries in there in the last few weeks. Cracking effort from that guy. Another one, two Manly guys. Stalwarts in the forward pack. Martin Tapau, Jake Trbojevic. Marty Tapau, look, the reason I think he's a fringe keeper, his points per minute are huge. Now, it sort of annoys me. I've watched it a couple of times this season. He goes off sort of after about 25, 30 minutes, comes on with about sort of 25, 28 minutes to go, but then he gets taken off in the last 5 minutes. Sort of annoys me because I'm hoping that he'll go from that 60 or 70 points and maybe get another 10 points in the last 5 minutes and get up to that 80 or 90. And there's been a few times where he's been taken off and he's sort of stuck on around that 60, 65, 70 points when it could have been so much more. But look, the key with this guy is basically the offloads and the dynamic sort of ability that he shows. The occasional line break here or there, but his tackle busts are good, his offloads are good. He gets around an extra 20 or 30 points a game in those kind of stats. So he's just got to keep that going and keep that confidence. When you have guys coming back like Daly Cherry Evans from injury, Tommy Turbo, things like that, that'll no doubt just help him because it'll give him the confidence to offload more. He knows those kinds of players are behind him. They really look like they're shaping a good team there at Manly. They're a little bit light on in the backs, which sort of sucks. But Ruben Garrick looks in good form. I think Georgie Tafua is a little bit of a weakness. I think he's sort of past his use by date. But yeah, Manly, I think a good team. I think Manasi Fainu is awesome. I really like the combination with Api Coruscant and Manasi Fainu. I think going back sort of 8-10 years ago, that dual hooker off the bench and starting was a big thing, and a big thing about momentum in the game and just making those sort of shifts with those different speeds. I think Manly, if they play that right and if Desi can coach that right, I think that'll just create worlds of space up the middle for blokes like Tommy Turbo and Daly Cherry Evans. Again, they're probably in a team where, despite having Marty Tapau and Jake Turbo, they might get dominated a little bit in the forwards from time to time, which, against teams like your Souths and your Melbourne and, your Roosters to a lesser extent, when those teams get on top of you in the forwards, you're going to lose. So that's sort of... and Jakey Turbo. Look, one thing I'll say about Jake, Turbo, as we love to call him, look, the return of Turbo is huge for him. The influence that these guys have on each other as brothers, not as players, but just as brothers. You got one guy playing lock or front row, and you got one guy playing fullback. They really shouldn't coincide too much, but they do. They do. They've grown up playing together. They've played rep footy together. These guys, when you have them inside and outside each other, you find Jake running off Turbo as well. So it's not just the other way around where Tommy Turbo's taking it off Jake, but it gets both ways. So look, I think this can only be a good thing. I think Jake's probably, from a Supercoach point of view, been a little bit down this season. But now that Turbo's back, and provided Turbo can stay injury-free, I think it's a massive pod for the run home because his ownership's not too high. Still substantial, but yeah, there's other guys out there in the second row with higher ownership. Look, round 16, massive buy round coming up. Big question is who to bring in. There's probably 6 to 8 guys that you can consider. Most teams now are set. Like most teams now have those core players. It just comes down. Round 16 just depends on head-to-head or overall. Which one are you? If you're trying to do both, which plenty of the top guys are because you're in cash leagues and things like that, you're trying to win both. I think you just got to have as many players on the park as you can. The hard thing for me, and the biggest thing is do you have Turbo already? When do you get him? If you've got Turbo already, well then, generally you've got him there with Teddy and sort of set and forget and you take the AE that week, Obviously, most people aren't going to have that many players. So if you're sort of sitting around that sort of anywhere between 13 and 15 players for the buy round, I think you're pretty solid. I think any less than 13, I think you're going to just drop in the rankings. You really need to be scoring 900 plus points in this year's buy rounds. I think, as I said before, the situation with trades and how many cash cows we've had, I don't think there's any excuses why you can't if you're planned right. So, anything less than that 13, I think unless you pick a pod captain that scores 150, I think you might be struggling. The round 16, who to bring in. Look, I'm just going to name sort of that top 4. There's a few other ones out there that people are talking about, but Ryan Madison now, ownership-wise, he's got a few out there, but this one's a little bit risky, and Latrell Mitchell I'm going to name after this as well. They're both a little bit risky because obviously Maddo's been 18th man, and Latrell, again, not to talk down Jackie White, and he's my boy, but Latrell probably belongs in there over him. At least on that X factor and what he can do and what he's proven that he can do. He obviously had a shocker game 1. I just think with the result that we saw in game 2, the fact that the Blues were so dominant, it's really going to be hard to cut anyone from that team. Freddie obviously copped a lot of shit for subbing in so many players, but it worked. So if it worked then, behind a home crowd in Sydney, why can't it work again? I think the biggest thing for Freddie is to get the guys up and say that wasn't your grand final, this next one's your grand final. Look, Latrell, I don't think he makes his way back into the team this year. I think next year he's back there. But again, that depends on form as well. If he goes walkabout again and stops turning up in clubland, well then, why can't Jack Whiten play it again? You got Michael Morgan on the other side of the field who's doing well in the centres as well. Michael Morgan, he's a winning team player. He just makes plays out of nowhere. And this is sort of going back into the day where you had your Laurie Dailies in the centres and things like that at time to time. You put your best 17 players on the park. The fact is that these guys are the best players in the game. They adapt, they play well. They just know how to play footy. So, it'll be a little bit of an interesting one to see that. But Maddo and Latrell, I think Maddo's probably more the essential one because I don't think he'll get in the squad. I think there's a chance that Latrell might. I don't know why, just sort of a feeling. But if Latrell gets called back in, obviously he doesn't play 16. Cam Smith's one. Now, again, Cam Smith's got pretty high ownership. Obviously, you've got to remember, guys, I'm doing these videos based on who I don't have. So, not to say other people at home don't have him, but because you do. But at the moment, I haven't had Cam Smith. This week, I'm going to trade him in. Just because at the end of the day, I've got Cookie. I'm happy there. You put Cam Smith in. Originally, I thought there might be the chance he'd play Origin. I really thought... I just think he's that selfish a bloke. I think all these... Look, don't get me wrong, he's been a great player and great for the game. But I don't think I ever cheered so hard when he got sent for 10 minutes in the sin bin against Cronulla last year. He's just... can't hack the bloke. But I just thought he'd take that Queensland spot, so I never sort of went near him. Now that he hasn't, look, I don't think it's going to happen for game 3. I think Benny Hunt was good enough there. And Daly Cherry Evans, without being solid, look, he wasn't playing behind a good forward pack, so he played well enough. I think that's your 7 and 9 combo for this year and maybe the next couple as well. The fourth one, look, RTS. Again, as I say, this is a little bit of a hard one because he's not so much a buy-in. At the end of the day, if anyone's got Turbo and Teddy combo, well, you sort of just stick with that. Hope hope Turbo scores 150 again this week, and he outweighs RTS's scores for the next 2 weeks. Most people, if you don't have Turbo, you tend to have RTS back there already as well. So anyone who doesn't, if you're looking for a 16 player, RTS is it. He had a bit of a lull in form, but I think he's going to go pretty strong and he'll come back well. Some pods, round 16 pods. Now, again, these are a few guys that I've sort of looked at trading in. I'm going to go with the old dog, Paul Gallen. Now, the reason I say this is purely because Andrew Fafita's out. Now, with Fafita being out 15 and 16, Gal, he's been solid. Obviously, we don't have the same heights on minutes numbers, point scoring numbers that we have in season past. He's definitely sort of lost that Supercoach guide status, but he's still capable. He still hogs the ball. He'll still run for 170, 180 metres. If you can jag a try, if you can jag a few offloads, they're playing the Bulldogs this week, so if they get a bit stupid, the week after that they're playing the Broncos. The Broncos early in the season absolutely thumped Cronulla, so the Sharkies are going to be up for a bit of revenge there. Gallen just might lead the team for the next couple of weeks. Look, by no means a keeper for the run home, but at the same stage, why not? At the end of the day, if you've got blokes starting like your Turbos and your Tamalolos, your Gerbos and your Tamalolos in the second row, Gal's not that much of a risk. He's sort of going to score 40 or 50. Coming into the bye round, what if he scores 80? What if he scores 90? So it's a little risk that I'm sort of willing to take. The other two guys that I'm looking at sort of trading in maybe in that second row or front row, Tavita Pangai Jr. Look, it's hard. I really thought Anthony Seibold going to the Broncos might unleash this guy, but it seems to be Payne Haas who's sort of taken the lead. And TPJ sort of found it hard to get in that starting squad or getting solid minutes in and out with a few injuries in there as well. Payne Haas has been absolutely sensational. I hope he's back for 16. I know he's got a little hamstring injury, supposedly in this week, but actually I don't know. I haven't checked the team list, but I read it earlier in the week that 15 was when he was due back, but if not, definitely 16. So hopefully he comes back for the bye round. But look, Matty Lodge has obviously been brilliant in the front row there, as has Payne Haas. So Tavita Pangai, he's really had to find his position there at lock. And he's just been in and out. There's been a little bit of sort of rolling around with the Brisbane players in the second row and who sort of starts, who's on the bench. So, not exactly what I'd hoped from the start of the year with Seibold going in there. But, look, things might change. I don't know. Again, it's just sort of a pod call. I think his ownership's only around 2 or 4% or something. So, for a guy that everyone was touting at the start of the year as being one of the must-haves, really hasn't performed that way, but he may come good. And the other third one, now I've got 2 second rows I'm going to take out this week. I've got 2 guys. Centre with Charles Nichol-Klokstad I'm going to get rid of. He's just sort of lulled a bit on form and just looking at a different direction. The other one's Sean Lane I'm going to get rid of. I'm a little bit disappointed in that because with Dylan Brown coming back, Dylan Brown matched up a lot better with Sean Lane on that left side that Jamin Salmon or Will Smith has. So I reckon the delivery service for Sean Lane is going to get better and better. But in saying that, those 2 guys are going to come out for either Gallen, TPJ or Matt Eisenhuth. Now, I'm a massive fan of this guy at the West Tigers. At the start of the year, though, he just couldn't get into the squad. Whether it was, I think he was in the 18 to 21. Then he forced himself onto the bench. Now I think he might have a starting role again. I haven't looked at the team list, but just a little bit of inconsistency in the forwards there at the West Tigers, not knowing exactly what to expect. But if this guy can nail down the starting spot, I really like his activity. I really like the kind of football player he is on the park. He's got game. He just needs to develop it. A lot like Alex Twal. Alex Twal I raved about at the start of the year. Jumped on him early, but I got rid of him because he just didn't have that attacking there. Very much sort of like your Aiden Tolmans and that. Twal, they'll make 50 tackles a game. They'll make 15 hit-ups a game. They'll give away a penalty or 2 and they'll make an error or 2. You sort of get that sort of 55 to 60 out of them every week. At this stage of the season, look, I could bring in Twal, but I just can't go back there after I've already been there. I'm going to go Eisenhuth because this guy scores a try every now and then. He offloads well. He's just got that bit more upside, a bit higher ceiling than the other two lads. Who else we got? Peter Hiku, couple in the centres. Peter Hiku and Daniel Tupou. Look, not too sure what I'll do here. Obviously, I mentioned that I'm getting rid of Charles Nickel-Clockstad, and I'll probably go to 2 second rows. My other option was to go one of these two guys and just bring in centre for centre. Peter Hiku. Look, this guy to me, I thought he'd go downhill after SJ left, but he's been solid this year without being great. But he's thrown in some good scores here or there, and RTS still plays that right-hand side, which sort of helps him out. So, look, right-hand side, right-hand side, left-hand side. Anyway, just a little bit of a pod, and the same with Daniel Tupou. You know he's going to be on the end of some bombs from the Roosters or on some good plays. His activity at the back hasn't been good. I thought he'd be more active after Blake Ferguson left the Roosters. I really thought that Tupou would take a lot more hit-ups. He takes good hit-ups, but he doesn't take enough. So he's probably sort of sitting around that 12 to 14 a match, whereas you really want a top sort of back like your Fergusons to be returning about 20 to 22 times a game, taking those third or fourth tackle hit-ups from the line as well when the forwards are getting a little bit tired. Tupou doesn't do it as effectively, but can score well. So again, a little bit of a pod there. The other one in the centres, or actually another two in the centres, mentioned him last week, was Ewan Aiken. Brought him in a couple of weeks ago. Scored 82 last week. Hampton and the Bogan mentioned on the podcast last night. I didn't put him in my team. Look, for me, he was just a money grab. I didn't have the confidence there in him scoring big. I thought if you could sort of average 50 or 55, that'd be great. But the thing is as well, he scored 82 last week, but he scored a try, I think, in the 78th to 79th minute with a line break. So take that away from him, and he probably scores under 50. The other one's Josh Dugan, Mr. Glass. This sort of goes back to the Cronulla thing, with the guys really benefiting from SJ coming back, Aaron Woods will be back, Fafita's back in 2 weeks. The one thing I love about this is Fafita comes back fresh. 3 weeks off for this guy is actually not a bad thing. Obviously, Cronulla are probably a better team with him, but the 3 weeks off means the knee gets a little bit better, the hemi gets a little bit better. He just might run that little bit better. So I think it's a good thing. Dugan, right-hand side, whether it's centre, whether it's winger, inside, outside, Jerry, inside, outside, Jerry on that side. Britton Nakor over there. Dugan either sets up the final play or finishes the final play. So I just think there's some points there. Scored a couple of tries last week, but only scored about 75. So that's a little bit concerning. I think one of them was off a kick and a little bit fortunate. But, forwards-wise, as I mentioned, Isaiah Papali I brought in last week. I just think he's a solid one for 16. Whether he's a keeper, look, his ceiling hasn't been as big this year. He hasn't attacked as well as he did last year. But he's still sort of good for 50 or 60 each week. He's been playing 80 minutes, so if you can get an attacking stat here or there as well, all of a sudden you're going to get a 75 or an 85 or somewhere out of him. The other one's Matt Lodge. Mentioned Matt Lodge a little bit earlier. Again, sort of just round 16. These are round 16 pods that I'm looking at. In no way are they sort of keepers maybe towards the end of the season, but you just know what you're going to get out of these guys. One thing I always look for in Supercoach is that consistency. Is that reliability of you know what to expect from a player, that one, they don't get injured, and two, they actually perform every week. You don't really get the 20s and 30s out of these guys. The minimum score you're sort of going to get is a 50. Occasionally they'll go below that if they get injured or if they get subbed out of unusual minutes. But yeah, obviously Lodge has been pretty good, and he probably holds the key to the Broncos. He leads the way. You've got Big Payne Haas, who's been brilliant, but Lodge seems to start the matches a little bit better. So yeah, I reckon they really rely on him. And the other one there is Joey Manu, another one in the centres. Now, obviously a massive score last week, so call it chasing points, but the price that this guy is $3.56. Now, I know Brent's a massive fan of this guy, and over the years I've become more and more. Forget the 130 odd or whatever it was at fullback last match. This kid's got game, whether it's in the centres, whether it's as a winger, whether it's as a fullback. Does Teddy get named this week? Obviously Teddy doesn't play 16, he'll play fullback again. just a little bit of pot at 350 odd K. Why not? You know, if you're going to take out someone like Charles Nickel Klokstad, or a few people looking at trading out Manu Mao and things like that. Manu Mao's 510 K or something. You make 160 grand, you get a guy who can score 100 off the bench. You know, from wherever he is playing on the park. So maybe a little one there. Run home pods. Now, again, probably half a dozen guys here. My first one is a little bit weird, is Reece Martin. Now, my decision here, Reece Martin is down to 320k. It's the first time I've actually looked at this guy, because for the past 6 or 8 weeks, with all the Dean Pay bullshit that's going on, haven't even fucking looked at the guy. But Dean Pay, plenty of talk around him actually getting a sack. Fuck, I hope it happens, and I think a lot of super coaches do. Someone put a post up on today, you know, about late mail at the Bulldogs, and there was a bunch of things about it. So I don't know whether they've got any ins or sources or whatever for that, but I hope whatever the bloke wrote was right, because, yeah, they need a caretaker coach. They need someone to come in and finish out the season, and anyone who does is going to bring Corey Harawira-Naera and Reece Martin straight into that side. These guys have got to be on the left or right. Raymond Fatala-Mariner should be there as well. Josh Jackson, look, obviously you've got to find a spot for him, but that should basically be your 4 back row rotation. I am a little bit of a fan of Adam Elliott, but he just doesn't do enough. He isn't consistent enough in what he does. He'll play one really good game and then he disappears for the next 3. So I think that guy just needs to work on a lot. But yeah, blokes like Suiaso Su and things like that, from a Supercoach point of view, not as effective. Benny Hunt. Now, obviously, Cleary's out injured. SJ will be a likely candidate for round 16. Now, SJ, massive break-even this week. I'm still thinking about bringing him in. Massive break-even of 125k. Look, if he scores 80, they're playing the Bulldogs. If he scores 80 or 90, he's only going to lose 15 or 20k. You know, it's not that big a deal. So you just hope he sort of hits and bounce back into form. But yeah, Benny Hunt, look, doesn't play 16. I think he's going to get selected for Origin again. But from a point of view of form, I think this guy's probably the best halfback in the game at the moment. Now, I don't mean on ability whatsoever. I just mean on form. Supercoach point of view, he's been averaging maybe 58, 60 over the last sort of 3 to 5 rounds. And we know what we can expect from him. He can actually score 100, 120, 140 here and there. So, could be just that big pod that you want to get in. Luke Keary. Now, I'm not too sure where Keary's back. Just sort of looking through names, saw him there, and I thought he'd be a pod for the run home. Again, it's a little bit hard in that 5'8 position. Another guy I've got named on this list is Matt Moylan, purely because these guys are in the 5'8 position. Kalen Ponga, again, I think you've got to set and forget. But if you're after someone, maybe a little bit of a pod who's sitting on that bench, some good matchups coming up, you may just chuck him in as a reserve and hope that week he scores maybe 80 or cracks the ton. Jimmy Roberts. Jimmy Roberts, since he's gone to South, he's been active, he's been good. Looks like he's nice and fresh. Whether he can keep that going, let's see. Obviously, Braden Burns back this week. Braden Burns, another one got on the list there. Ownership's down to, I think, about 5 or 6% since he went out early in the season with that hemi. It's been a much, much longer recuperation than a lot of people thought. So, Braden Burns will be back. Let's see if he can bounce back how he started the season. Bailey Simonson. I think this guy is an absolute weapon. Bailey Simonson for the Raiders. Look, I'm hoping he doesn't finish off the season well, because I think he starts for the Raiders next season. I think he's on the wing. It's a little bit hard because obviously you've got Kotrick there and you've got Rapana, Joey Leilua, Jared Croker. How do you fit all 5 guys in? Charles Nickel Klokstad obviously at fullback. There's something about this guy that I think is brilliant. He's a brilliant finisher, but he will develop his game. He's obviously come from rugby sevens, and that's a huge transition. That's a huge change. Positional play, different fitness levels, different sort of body strengths, and everything like that. So I think this guy is definitely one to watch. I think for later in the season, again, I think he's around that sort of 300, 320k. So a little bit awkwardly priced, but it may be just someone you drop to. Again, not for 16, doesn't play around 16, but maybe for that run home, maybe get him in after 16 and just hope he can sort of blow up. And then the last one there, I've got Nathan Brown, the Eels. Look, plenty of injuries for this guy. Actually, Hampton and Bogan mentioned last night that we've got a guy in our league because I pissed off someone and told him to eat a dick. I actually told the guy he could eat Nathan Brown's dick. But anyway, that was due to Brownie's unfortunate injuries early in the season. But yeah, we'll move away from that one. And lastly but not least, guys, my trades for the week. So we're going to go Reed Marnie to Cameron Smith. We're going to go James Fisher-Harris to Ryan Madison. Fisher-Harris, again, gone a little bit quiet, doesn't play 16. Ryan Madison, huge upside. Hopefully won't play Origin. Get him in for around 16. Hopefully he can score 70 or 80. Going to go Nathan Cleary to SJ. Now, look, before the injury in Origin, Nathan Cleary wasn't even playing good then. He's been inconsistent this year. I think he's got a few unicorn points. Now that he's out for 4 weeks, look, I'm going to get rid of him. If he comes back and tons up or something, then I might get him back in. But for now, I'm going to go to SJ. I'm going to have SJ and Dylan Brown. I've had Dylan Brown since the start. Haven't got rid of him. There's probably a chance there I could just play Dylan Brown this week. But, you know, I might just wait and see how he comes back. And then the last 2 trades. So they're the first 3. Last 2 trades, as I mentioned before, Sean Lane, Charles Nickel-Klokstad. It'll either be to Gallen, TPJ or Eisenhuth. I'm leaning towards Gallen and TPJ. We'll see. But could also put Hiku in there and just go a straight swap from Chance to Hiku. So we'll see how that goes. Guys, that's about it. It's gone for about 40 minutes. So hopefully you've watched till the end. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. Thanks for joining in. We'll see you next week. Next week, Supercoach Fortune Teller. I'm pretty sure from last week's Weird and Wacky, I got up there with 11s over 12s. I'm pretty sure Brent went none from 3. I went 1 from 3. So next week, you're going to see me eat the hottest chips on earth. I think they're the second hottest chips because I think that Packy challenge is a bit hotter. But the ones that are made here in Australia, I've ordered a box of them and I think it's, due to arrive in a couple of days. But we'll get that one. Hampton's got the ice bucket challenge, so he's going to get out on his patio and throw a bucket of ice water on his head. That'll be good to look forward to next week. Cheers, guys.